Hey everyone, welcome to Upper Gallery Artist Talks here at the Hoboken Historical Museum, and we have a great program tonight. We do hope we have some listeners signing in. YouTube is our main platform, so if you're signed in, you'll be able to text and make a comment, and we'll take the time to read it, so we enjoy that. And this program is not Hoboken Talks, it's the Upper Gallery Artist Talks. The difference is, and sometimes there's crossover, is that we're interviewing the artist who is next showing in the Upper Gallery. And past interviews have been with Carol Halabian, Frank Hanavan, the Mecca Brothers, Lily Zane, Lou Carbone, and Ray Guzman. And tonight we have a very special interview, and it's with the artist Deborah Pohl, and she will be having an opening this Sunday, and we're all invited to that. But we like to do this interview first to get a sense of the work and put it in context. Usually the opening itself is hard to get one-on-one with the artist, except for socially. So this gives some depth. And of course, it lives on, and it's a great record of the work and the comments by the artist. So let's welcome Deborah to the screen. And there you are.
Thank you. Thank you.
So glad you're here.
Happy to be here. A little nervous, but very happy.
No, you don't seem nervous. And as we always say, you know your paintings and you have a great body of work.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure if you even got a chance to look at the work on the walls, the way it was hung. What do you think?
Well, thank you, Bill Curran. He made it really easy for us to hang the work. We went along slowly and we just kind of organically went from this baby doll with the Monet around the wall. So if anyone comes, you could tell, well, don't tell us if we hung it wrong. I like it. So that's what counts, right?
Hey, it's your decision. You get to call the shots here. So we have 35 paintings on the wall. And I know that you recently received a grant or a fellowship from New Jersey Council of the Arts.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that a little?
Sure. Thank you, New Jersey Council of the Arts. Yeah, every 2 years they give out grants for painting. So I applied with this series. I don't know if any of those made it to the wall, maybe a couple with 10, and they have anonymous people that judge it, and they gave me money to spend for this year on the painting. Yes. And I won once years ago for painting as well, different painting.
So you're a two-time fellowship recipient?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know if I've met a two-timer.
Oh.
It's like the Oscars twice. That's pretty cool. So those fellowships used to be not common, but fairly common. Then they cut back on the amount of them.
Yes.
And then every 2 years.
They used to be every year you could apply for painting, and then if you won, you can apply again for a number of years. And now they made it so each discipline has once every other year.
Okay,
yeah.
That's right.
So those of you out there, they also give grants for poetry, prose, video. So anyone, it's worth a shot. Yes.
Definitely. Got to be in it to win it. So it looks like a comment from Eileen Julian.
Oh, hi, Eileen. Eileen is one of my best buds in town. We have coffee together. Boy, hi, Eileen.
Okay.
Thanks for watching.
Cool. And keep those comments coming. And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I went to background, I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to Rutgers, Mason Gross for art. And for a number of years afterwards, I painted and had some part-time jobs. Then I went and I worked as an art administrator at Middlesex County Cultural and Heritage Commission for a few years. And then I started teaching. So, and then I went to counseling school. So now I'm a counselor in the Patterson school system.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Is that what you meant? Maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So would you say you grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey?
Yes. In Wayne, New Jersey.
Wayne, New Jersey. Route 80. Yeah.
Right.
And 23 right there.
I'm a product of New Jersey.
Okay. Yes. There you go. And do you remember your first impressions when you came to Hoboken?
I always loved Hoboken. I remember coming here as a college student and going to Maxwell's to see shows. That's mainly why we came to Hoboken. And another reason we came to Hoboken was we would park near the path, which was easy to do when I was young, and we would take the PATH train to the city. So between Maxwell's and the PATH, I always had really, positive experiences with Hoboken over the years.
And so we're talking 1980s, 1990s?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 80s
okay.
and 90s.
The good years, as I say. Okay. Before Hoboken really changed a lot. So I know you have a studio in Hoboken.
At the Newman Leather Building.
Right. And I think we'll just go to a shot of that. Okay. And tell us how long you've been there. Any background on the Newman Leather factory and a home to artists and so on?
I saw they had a studio for rent, so I went and I met with Mara Altamura, thank you, and Tim Hines, and they selected me out of the people that came, and so I was able to get a studio, which was really thrilling to have a studio outside of the house, and I've kept it, so I've had it for maybe 20 years now.
Wow.
And it's wonderful because you can make a mess and you could keep it a mess and set up your work and leave it there. If you can see on the right hand side is a box where I set up still lifes, and on the wall and I have a couple of easels. So sometimes I work on more than one painting at a time and move around the studio.
So I almost recognize those windows. Does that mean you're on the 5th floor?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Facing west. So
right.
It's beautiful just to stay in there and stare out the window and get inspiration. It's wonderful. Great sunsets.
Sure. And in a past life, I used to rent studio space on the 5th floor.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think those 2 windows were mine, but I can relate to that view and that special sunset, which I used to call a Tim Daly sky. I don't know if that's appropriate anymore, but yeah. And talk a little bit about how important Newman Leather is to many artists in town and what's going on there as far as you could tell.
Well, I think it keeps the artists in the town. Jody Fink works right next door, and she's been an artist in town for years. Glenn Garver. These are all people that have been here for 20, 30 years making art and creating the cultural community. And, it's just wonderful to go there. You see it's inspirational. Other people are working, and it means a lot to the people that are in the town. And now, especially because some of the other buildings have been either torn down and made into condos, or that horrible fire that happened last year. My partner in crime and my fiance, Bill Hamilton, he's got a studio that he shares with me and also on the 4th floor. So he ended up taking up the slack and renting out to a lot of the bands that lost their rehearsal spaces.
Oh, cool.
In the other building.
Right.
So, and so to have a rehearsal space in town for bands is very important.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can get more difficult because of noise and things like that. So
yes.
I got it.
Yeah.
So you want noisy neighbors for that. So this is the view looking west from Newman Leather.
Right. Yes. All of the views are amazing from the building.
And until they build something to block those views.
Right. Yeah.
And is this from your studio window?
Yes, that's from my studio window.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very cool. And
that's Bill Hamilton, and he's also a videographer and works freelance on his work when he's not being a musician. And so that's more of my stuff. That's part of the artist life, and why you need a studio and why it's so important to keep studio space for artists is we need to have walls that we could just play around with, put inspirational things up and work on. The whole studio becomes kind of like a part of your brain, I think.
That's a good way to put it. And is it hard to share? I mean, obviously you guys know each other, but do you when you paint, Bill's Space Show?
Oh, that's, if you want to go, Bill has his own YouTube channel called Bill's Space Show that he does videos, and also bands that play in his space, you can watch them play.
Okay, but
sometimes.
don't
Yeah.
do it now.
Don't do it
Stick
now.
with the show. You can do
Yeah.
that later. So I guess I was thinking, like, when you paint, do you need to be like, does it need to be quiet? Do you need to be contemplative? Do you need to get into the groove in a sense?
I'm like most artists that I have NPR on constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. I don't really change my.
But are you a member? Right.
Yeah, some years I remember to.
Okay.
Yeah, but or FUV, or I have music or NPR on, and that's why Bill is wearing his headset, so he could do his work and wear his headset, so I don't get distracted by it.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And could you give us an idea, like, if you have the time, how much time are you putting into the studio, so to speak?
When I'm working my day job, I put in 1 to 3 hours, and then I try to put on more more on the weekends. Yeah.
Right.
And,
so you're saying you're putting in your day job, which, with commute and all that,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
8 to 10 hours probably,
Yeah.
if not more.
And
then in the evening, or even before you went into work, you would paint? Or
well, I also have an easel set up at home, so sometimes I'll wake up early and paint at home. I always have a
Right.
still life set up in my dining room area, so I'll work on a painting there. Then it's great to just be able to go and work in the studio at night. And if I was home, I would just fall asleep probably.
like most people.
Yeah. So at the studio, I make sure I don't have anything that's too comfortable. No couch. I don't, because then I would just fall asleep. Yeah. So
Sure.
So it's a way to keep me working as an artist as well.
We did put in a few pictures of old Newman leather.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of attention on this building now. It is I would say, the last large place for artists to do their craft, and any building like this is in danger. And I know there are certain agreements with the city council that the owners work with the current artists. I'm not sure how that will all work. I don't know if anyone really knows, but we really hope that this building makes it into the next 25 years or more, that artists still get to use it. Can we just go back to the shot before? This is the shot today, but can you give any, do you know what's going on with those type of details of the artist's longevity in the building?
As far as I know, I don't want to speak to anything and get it wrong, but
Right.
my own personal understanding that they've told us is that they're going to take the artists and put them in one area of the Newman Leather building and make the rest into condos. I'm not sure who gets to be the artists that move. I'm hoping all of us get to move in there.
Right.
I don't know how that'll be easier, of course, with visual artists. I don't know, with the musicians, I'm hoping that we could all just move, but so I'm just hoping for the best.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have to scream really loud.
And
that's my take on it.
But we recently had a meeting. We have meetings on Zoom where all the artists speak to each other, and we were told that they were wondering if we still are interested or concerned, but we all are really interested and really concerned, and we want to really have it as our space going forward. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that the building really gets together for the artist studio tour, which is coming up. I'm forgetting the date.
I
Sorry,
think it's November 5th and 6th.
Okay,
it's
2-day event, which is good. And I like showing this photo because it shows the trolley that ran right by Newman Leather. Most people probably didn't even know there was a trolley, but to think that it ran right by the studio windows is pretty amazing. And the building, as the smokestack is there. I don't think the water tower is there, but this is a building that goes back to the 1860s.
Oh, that's
the
amazing.
Original section, and was one of the major suppliers of leather goods, like to the U.S. Army, saddles for the Civil War, a tannery, but they did all, they started with the hides and worked their way up. And it was a very important business in Hoboken, one of the larger employers. And that building is kind of, it's on a funny triangle, but it's almost is a square block.
Oh, I want to add, that they also have small businesses that are part of the Newman Leather Building.
Right.
There's a gym on the bottom floor, and there's small businesses that people can still afford to start a business if they started in the Newman Leather Building. So
Right. I mean, it's one of the things that makes Hoboken interesting is a
Mhm.
building like this.
Yes.
There's such a diversity of services, and going on the artist studio tour is a great way to experience that, because it's a building that when you first enter in, you're not really sure where to go.
Mhm.
And so you almost need to know the folks. I mean, you need to use your GPS to
Yeah.
navigate the
It's
the
a labyrinth.
hallways. There's a really interesting courtyard in the back. There's a Sarah gallery on the first floor, which
yes.
is amazing. There's pottery studios, the gyms, there's woodworking, there's furniture making,
Mhm.
the musicians, of course. It's a great part of Hoboken.
It is.
And
It's
it just
wonderful.
needs to be maybe promoted a little more.
Mhm.
And at a time like this, when you see most buildings being converted or torn down for new structures, you really want to pause and just say, what will be lost from something like this? And it is that constant tension between artist and commerce.
And from my understanding, I believe that a lot of people move to Hoboken because of the culture. Even if, maybe they're not an artist, but they love the arts. They like to be around artists, musicians, have those opportunities. So this is good for the whole community.
Right. And then we have Bill Curran piping in. You want to say hi to Bill?
Hi, Bill.
And Deborah has given a thumbs up on the installation.
Hi,
There's
Jerry.
Jerry Fallow chiming in. And so anyway, there's the vintage shot, probably the 40s, 1940s. Here's Newman Leather today without the trolley. Essentially, it's the same building.
Yeah, a few more air conditioners.
That's right. And a few cemented over windows.
Yeah.
But Newman Leather there. The smokestack is maybe in the distance and we can't see it from this angle. But there is actually the original turbines and heating equipment in the powerhouse, which is on off of Willow Avenue on the courtyard, that I don't think most people have seen. But it looks like from Frankenstein, the power equipment, when this building was coal-fired. It's pre-electrical.
I know what we had a courtyard art show. So we set up our art nearby, and it's beautiful. Those are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Really interesting. And please come by November 5th and 6th. And if you can't find my studio, my phone number is on my website, so you can text me. But so just come, but go into the Newman Leather Building, and they still have the photographs of the animals that they used to tan on the walls, like
a little
out in
sad,
nature. It's a little sad, but it's interesting historically.
It's history.
It's history. There's a lot of signage that's still from the 1800s and early 1900s that's up, and it's really interesting. And there's some of the floors. They still have a lot of the equipment that they used to use just strewn around that were too heavy to pull out of the building. So,
right.
So I've used some and pulled them into my studio when I could. Yeah. Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia. Yeah. And Claudia, hope you can make it on Sunday, 2 to 5 for the reception. Here's Michelle.
Oh, hi, Michelle. I love learning more about the history of the Newman Building. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for watching. Michelle's an old friend of mine from college and a wonderful artist.
Gotcha. And are we seeing your window from this building? From this shot, I think we would.
Yes, it's on the 5th floor.
5th floor.
To the right.
To the right. So so you're I got it. And Claudia says she'll be there. All right, bring friends. We like it. And so we really haven't looked at any paintings yet, except for what they see in the background. So I think we're probably going there soon. Oh no, actually, sorry. You talked about how you're, as an artist changes, and that's, some artists do the same thing over and over and over again. Some artists change with exploring different mediums,
Mm-hmm.
exploring different techniques, subject matter. So you had mentioned this was an earlier kind of artwork.
But this is one of the reasons the Newman Leather Building is so important, because it allowed me to, explore doing some projects. I made a cave, and at the end of the cave I left bricks and empty beer cans, like teenagers had found it and were hanging out in it. And it was kind of like a cave of meaning. I was thinking of Plato's cave. There's a lot of metaphors with caves that we could come up with, but not
Sybil's cave.
Not Sybil's cave.
Okay.
No prophetess.
Okay.
No one's going to predict anything.
Sure.
It was. So I left that up for a long time. So I thought it might be fun just to look at some other work.
So, but what are the visuals in your cave, in Deborah's cave?
I used a lot of art magazines. There's a lot of art that I hung up on the wall, and also a lot of advertisements and consumerism. So.
And okay, Bill Kern, do you ever paint views from the window? You have mastered still life.
Thank you. I have painted plein air a little bit at the shore, but I haven't really done that in Hoboken as of yet. I'm kind of reserved, so I'm a little nervous about just going out and painting on the street. But maybe I'll start doing that more. I really enjoyed it at the shore.
You'll meet Frank Hanovan around town if you're doing the plein air thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I guess I'm going to discuss this one a little more. So the materials were magazines. Do I see duct tape? My favorite
lots
medium.
Of duct tape. Yeah, and there was a lot of chicken wire.
Okay.
As well.
And so where did you do this in Newman Leather? Like
it
hallways?
Was
in the studio.
In my studio, and it curved around, and it was
Gotcha.
with candlelight, so it had more of a realistic vibe.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And I started as a painter, and when I was at Mason Gross, I mostly painted, and after that, I kept painting. And when I won my first grant years ago, it was for painting realism. So, but I always wanted to get better at it. So, the Florence Art Academy was right around the corner, so I took a class at the Florence Art Academy, and there's a photo from my class, and that's Cornelia Hearns, and it picked up and left. Now it's in Sweden. They have one in Florence, Sweden, but I really took off. I learned I was using too much solvent, not enough linseed oil. So,
where was the studio?
This was in the Manna Art Building.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember when they set up there. Yeah, a few years back, but they've moved on.
I'm not sure why they had to move on.
Right.
But they had to move on. But we were lucky to have it on the Jersey side instead of in New York City. And I know part of it was because they had Northern Light available. In the studio.
Right. Can you talk about Northern Light and artists' connection?
Sure. Well, traditionally, artists always try to have windows facing the north because you'd get sunlight for most of the day, and it was a cool light. So what I do is I just use shades and shut out our light because I have a Western light, as you saw, and I use bulbs that mimic the full spectrum of light. So so it's like painting outside. I mean, it would be lovely to have a north facing studio. Maybe one day I will, but I get by with my bulbs.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we'll move on to the next slide. So this is again earlier work.
Yes. I had a show at De Soulful Cafe. Thank you, Stephen Bailey, a few years back. And this was called the Pohl Project, and I sold each of these for $5 and gave all the money to Planned Parenthood. So this was, represented that, that you supported giving money to Planned Parenthood and pro-choice and pro, I'm getting caught up in my words, but
sure.
Yeah. So, but each pillow is so much fun to make. And at first I was going to charge different prices, but then I just started charging $5 each, and I gave all the money to Planned Parenthood. So I raised over $500 to Planned Parenthood for Planned Parenthood. And I think the Jersey Journal wrote it up that it was going to happen. And then the head of Planned Parenthood came to De Soulful Cafe for the show. And thank you, Debbie Schwartz. She was the musician in residence for the month that the show was up. So she had music every week. So she's another musician in town who works at the Newman Leather Building and rehearses there.
There we
Yeah,
go.
and has a
No
band
degrees of separation.
Yeah, Psychopositive. So she's been able to, because small businesses, even though they're selling food, they can look around and see, oh, can I show some art? Can I have music on a Friday night or Saturday night and fit a musician in the corner? And we really appreciate it. So thank you.
And just kind of curious, are most of your friends artists or musicians?
I would say so. Yeah.
Mhm.
Just because I end up wanting to go to openings, museums. So we have this communality
Sure.
of what we'd like to do in our free time.
And people
Yeah.
support each other.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
As we'll see on Sunday. Right. Okay. And so this is more representational of the work that you're showing in the upper gallery. And tell us what we're looking at. We're sort of looking at a spool. No, yeah. Tell us what we're looking at.
This is one of my, I did this one over the summer, and so we were talking about how do you say it? Trompoloid?
I think you did it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Before, and I didn't set out to do trompoloid, but they come out sometimes like that, and I like that effect, and I always love paintings like that at the Met, and I was restricted by still life painting to what you could put on the table, but I thought, oh, if I go on the wall and just start spreading out, then I could go as large as I want to with a painting. And here's an example of how I paint. I set up a still life and I move the objects around until I come up with something that appeals to me through light and color. And I try to use classic still life objects like fruit, drapery, and I use common things in our everyday lives because I like to update it. I don't want it to look anachronistic. I want it to look like it's contemporary. So I have the mask, of course, because we're going through that now. I find a lot of things in the neighborhood. A lot of people leave things on the stoops around Hoboken when they're getting rid of things. It's a fun thing to do when you're walking around. You could go shopping, and so I found that little dinosaur on my block somewhere, and then I just set up my easel and I paint directly from life.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
the image on the left is the actual objects and
Yes.
setup,
Mhm.
and what's on the right is your painting,
Mhm.
and this is a photograph of them side by side.
Right. Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
just it could get confusing seeing it on a computer screen in 2D and 3D. So here's Bill. Deborah, he mentioned earlier this week that your paintings before the show were more abstract. Can you explain? So I guess he's saying, Deborah, you mentioned earlier this week.
I don't, but I know, I think more conceptual a lot of times, more like with my projects I meant. With painting, I tend to be more of a realist most of the time. But I guess the pills were abstract. Maybe I was probably talking because the pills are, geometric abstractions that are of a pill. So I only used the shape of the pill and then abstracted it from that. But I usually base any artwork I do on some form of something in the real world and then abstract from it. Like even the cave was a cave, and then I abstracted from that to make that project. So thank you.
And again,
for the
these
question.
are realistic.
Yes.
You're really trying to represent the objects the way your eye sees it, with the light and shape and color and tonality.
Yes. I'm really trying to do that. I'm not trying to do photorealistic where it looks like a photograph. So that's why it's important for me to set it up and look at it in real life, because it has a different quality then. It doesn't look like a photo. But also I sometimes I try to use brushwork that if you go close, you can see the brushiness and the artist's hand in it. And then you step back and it comes together. So I'm not trying to make it as realistic as possible, like when you go up close to it, but as representational of a realistic object.
So this whole Trompoloid, issue, can get a little confusing.
Mhm.
Just looking it up a little bit, it sort of, translates to deceiving your eye,
Mhm.
almost like like a faux kind of thing,
Yeah.
a realistic faux. But this is different because generally Trompe-l'oeil might have a frame around it, like a painted frame even, or
Yes.
the background becomes part of not the gimmick, but part of the trick of deceiving your eye.
Yeah, I think with my art, sometimes, with the Venn diagram of different genres and what you're trying to do, I sometimes I trip over the trompe-l'oeil effect, but I'm not going for that necessarily. A lot of times I'm just going for, the aesthetics of what the colors and the values of the objects are. I'm not necessarily trying to trick the eye. I kind of stop the painting at a certain point um, where it reads to me like the object, but I also enjoy looking at it. I don't. It's really hard to tell that when the painting is done. I kind of know, but that's the old joke. Like if you want to bother a painter, say, "Oh, is this done?" But I try to. So I'm looking more also at classic still life painters like Morandi from the 50s does beautiful still lifes that are very still, and you can look them up if you want. And his paintings don't look exactly like real life, but that they're bottles, and he's going after. So I'm trying to find beautiful compositions. I'm more after what a beautiful composition and the aesthetics of it. Also, like Audrey Flack was a big influence. She worked in the 80s as a still life painter, and her work was more photorealistic, but what was special about her work was it was also very contemporary. She put a lot of objects in that weren't seen before in still lifes. And I was just in the Met last weekend, and I was looking at, or 2 weeks ago, I was looking at the Cezannes, and they're just so interesting, and they're falling into, he's going from traditionalism and falling into cubism or whatever he was doing. I don't know, but so I try to look at still life paintings going all the way back to like the 1600s, 1500s,
and then
to see what artists are doing.
So, and there are a lot of painting references in your work.
Yes, the strings actually are a reference to a Spanish painter from the 1600s. I don't think I wrote down his name. Content. I forget his name. I'm sorry, but so I try to make references to other painters sometimes.
Sure.
As quotes.
And
they inspire
obviously
me.
the Van Gogh reference
Yes.
here.
Mhm.
So why Van Gogh?
Well, I love Van Gogh, and I guess I use objects that are around me. So even though they're still lives, they're still about me in some way and my life. And so they're the objects I have, because I'm an artist and love to look at art. I have a lot of art books and posters and postcards. So I'll grab them and use them as an object as well.
So do you have all these in this magic treasure chest and you pull them out, or like?
Almost. It's a little messier than a treasure chest. That would be great to have it in one place.
Right.
But they spread out all over the place.
But I can just saying, you're putting it together and you go, where's my dinosaur?
Right.
You're really looking for that object.
Mm-hmm.
And the hanging, again, that's referencing this historical painter who would always hang things, you said?
I think a lot of artists have done it. So I'm not the first. But yeah, there was a Spanish still life painter who's fantastic who would hang some vegetables and fruit.
Right. Because otherwise you have to paint them sitting down.
Right.
They're not hanging anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that could create an awkward perspective of the other things. So this is sort of a way to flatten everything, I guess.
Right. And to spread out and also to make it something that's unique, because we don't ever hang fruit on the wall. So I don't want to just paint something that you've seen before. I want to put it in a different a different organization, so it's something that's appealing and unique.
Right.
I
I didn't
try.
really understand it
Yeah.
until you started describing it, but the hanging is really essential. I can just see you spending a lot of time doing that.
That's actually the most stressful part of my art of this series is setting up the still life.
Right.
And I get a little, cathartic letdown after I'm done with the painting, and like a little high once it's done, like, oh great, I can move on, put it on Instagram, move on. But then and then like, oh, what am I going to paint now? And then I start just grabbing everything in my studio, and I have a whole shelf of different fabrics, and I'll start hanging that up or laying it down, or I have this box, and I just start with too much stuff and then start taking things away. And that's usually how I end up with a composition.
And in a certain way, the space in between these objects becomes, just as important, I think.
Yes. And sometimes you end up with just one object at the end. And for a while I was just doing one object pieces, which I loved because it makes it so dramatic. But I this show that I have here, I tried to hang work that has more than one object, because it adds a different level of complexity, hopefully, and then the viewer gets to make connections between the objects as well.
So up on the screen we see large graphics.
Thank you, Rand.
Oh, Rand looked it up. Okay.
Cotton, yes.
Cotton. So that was cool. Okay, we finally got it. Okay.
Artists have visual brains, right? I hope.
Yeah. Sorry, all the relatives of Cotton.
Yeah.
So talk this one a little bit.
This is the last one that I finished, and it's in the show. And I was thinking of this show because I wanted to do some warmer colors, and like you could see, like the coconut, if you look up closely, it's very brushy, but when you stand farther back, it reads more realistically. So
right.
Yeah.
And this is unusual that they're not hanging. So in a way, this is more typical of a still life.
I try not to restrict myself, and I'll just keep moving things around until something appeals to me.
Right.
And actually I started painting this, and then I realized, I have nothing in the upper left-hand quadrant. So then it's always easy to throw a brush down and some paint tubes to add in.
And how is the seahorse standing?
Oh, it's leaning. It's leaning against the Wonder Book.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Wonder Book. I remember those.
Yeah.
Is that like the encyclopedias of the 60s?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. You used to get them in the supermarket, I think.
Yeah. So I've had that book for, I don't know, 20 years. So I finally got to put it in a painting. I didn't know why I was saving it. So it's always fun for me to finally get to use an object I have laying around the studio.
Old friends.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the box, was that like a special choice, the box everything's sitting on?
No, I just like a challenge, and as you can see, there's a lot going on with that box, and it's the colors are similar, but they change slowly as you go from left to right. So I just really like a challenge. So I found that hard to paint.
And can you talk a little bit about what medium you're using?
Oh, I use oil paint, and mostly linseed oil. Yes.
And that is why do you use that as opposed to acrylic? Or
personally, I guess I just think it's easier to use oil paint. I like the effect of oil paint, and I don't mind that it's going to stay wet. I work with that. So.
And another good reason to have a studio, so you can escape odors, I guess.
Right. Well,
fumes.
I don't use solvents. I mostly just use linseed oil, but at the beginning of the painting, I might use some Gamsol or some mineral spirits. So yeah, it is good to have a studio that's easy to air out.
And then do you put some sort of neutral base on the canvas before you start, or is it a white canvas?
I used to make it more of an ochre, but now I just use white.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And typically, how long on a painting? And do you work at one maybe at home and one at the studio? Two different setups?
Right. And it could be anywhere from one day to 2 weeks, I would say, for
Wow.
one painting.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little longer, but I'll work longer hours on one painting to finish it. So.
And
Yeah.
if it's a small painting, is that relatively go quicker or not necessarily?
Actually,
or?
that's the sad part. The small paintings take about as long as a large painting. So you might as well paint larger. But I love small paintings. I always love looking at small paintings and the intimacy that it brings. So, but I'm trying to force myself to paint larger.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And most of the paintings, of the 35 paintings that are on the wall here, were probably ranging some smaller than 8 by 10, but that might be kind of an average size, up to 11 by 14, that kind of thing.
I think the largest ones are 12 by 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a few larger ones at home, but I thought that I wanted them to be similar sizes. So yeah, it's 5 by 7 all the way up to 12 by 16s in the show.
Gotcha. And when you're painting, could you describe the feeling you have?
Well, it could be anywhere from the feeling. I don't know about the feeling, but I enjoy it, and maybe it's meditative. I'm not sure, but especially if it's going well, it's wonderful. You get a wonderful feeling if it's going well. And then there's always one part of the painting where you're like, why did I choose this? This is so stupid. Like, why am I doing this? But I promised myself to always finish every painting. So no matter how much I think in the middle of it that I had the wrong idea and this is never going to work out or look good and I'll never want to show it to anyone, I force myself to go through that to finish every painting. And a lot of times I surprise myself and I'm like, oh, okay. So I wonder, I think a lot of people go through that in the middle of a project.
Sure.
So.
And do you know when you're finished, if it's good or not?
No, I can't tell. I don't know. I don't know which ones are good or bad. I try to rely on some artist friends that I trust their judgment, and I could also, I put them all on Instagram. Instagram's been great for me. So thank you, Instagram followers, because I feel like there's a little community of still life painters around the world that we look at each other's work. So, but I know you can't go by likes either for that because it's such a small format.
Right.
So.
Well, Jerry seems to like this piece.
Thank you, Jerry.
She's following fire code regulations, and this is a symbol of that.
Well, thank you. Actually, this one was in a magazine. There's this magazine called Soup Can, and if you look it up, you can. They always look for work, and it's a poetry magazine that has art. And so I did this piece. I found this exit sign just strewn on the floor in the Newman Leather Building, and I picked it up and I didn't even dust it off, and I just started painting it. And so the person who publishes Soup Can magazine, thank you, he saw it and he asked me if I would put it in the magazine. So it
Right.
spoke to him.
I mean, I must say it's like an unusual object to make a painting of, and that's what makes it interesting. And I don't know, I'm sort of reaching out here, but Duchamp was known for exhibiting a toilet bowl, at a big show in the Museum of Modern Art in France, and said, this is art.
Yeah, that's
so like something you wouldn't think, but when you look at a toilet bowl, the base of it is beautiful.
Yeah, I guess.
And so the way you've handled it painterly seems to be that same kind of, I would read it the same way.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but if you think about it in that way, art, still life painting and found object art, ready-mades like Duchamp made, can overlap in that sense that it was a ready-made and then I painted it. So thank you.
But you actually worked harder than Duchamp on this.
Yeah, maybe.
I know you did.
Yeah, well, he had to carry it. It looked heavy. That thing,
Oh,
right?
he paid someone, I'm sure. Anyway, he He was a good salesperson.
But I think that one falls into the abject, kind of ridiculous. Like I don't mind making my work abject or ridiculous, or trying to find humor in things. So, there's obvious humor, and it's not an exit sign being used what it's supposed to be used for anymore.
Right, sure.
It's just this thing on the
and I'm sure it's obsolete at Newman Leather. They have the most modern ones today.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely. So is this one in the show? I'm not sure.
Yes, it's right
Is
behind
it right
us.
behind me? Someone said that.
And
okay.
It's the one that's on the postcard. So.
Definitely. I knew it was familiar. And it's on, we can't really see this, but it's also on the mug, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. We'll feature that later.
And I just want to say thank you, Eileen. She gave me that brick one morning, and she said, I don't know, maybe you could use this. And I put it in one of my paintings. And again, these are just objects I found around my house, and they go with that Matisse, and they reflect the. But I'm thinking when I'm doing it that it's another object that I'm putting in equally as to the other ones. So, and it has all the same colors in it. So
that special blue tape.
And the blue tape, yes.
Gotta have blue tape. And so it's going to come out of this, like when you get together of your posse, they're all going to be bringing objects that you need to put in your still life.
Yes, I as long as I don't have to give it back to you, and you don't mind if it never ends up.
Okay.
Or if I break it by accident, please just give me random objects. I love them.
Okay. We can help out too. We have piles of random objects. Excellent.
This one I decided to send you as a slide because this one I did in one sitting, and it's alla prima style, wet on wet, where you just so I set up the still life at home, and it's so satisfying to work that way. So
describe the wet on wet versus the other techniques you're using.
Well, alla prima translates to the first, but it just means you just do it all in one sitting, and you just keep slopping on the paint, and you don't wait for things to dry. If anything, you could scratch it off, but
so this wouldn't take 3 hours. This would happen pretty quick, or
actually I think it took like 5 hours.
Really?
But it was one sitting. So
you painted for 5 hours?
I paint for 5 hours, yes.
Really?
A lot of times.
Wow. So
I take breaks, but
right.
Sometimes it's just an hour, but sometimes it'll
Does
be
your
5
hand
hours.
ever lock up, or?
No.
I mean, that's pretty intense. You must be exhausted.
No, it's I sit down, I listen to the radio.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking to see if I got any questions.
Sure. And do you kind of get lost in that time when you're painting? Musicians will talk about getting, lost in playing the music, kind of like in the groove. And just wondering if you feel that. Maybe
a little bit. I mean, it's thrilling when it's working out, when you're painting and you're enjoying the way it looks, and it's a challenge. Like, how do I make that table? How do I make that fabric look like it's folding over? Oh, no, every time I put something down, I think, should I go brighter? Should I go darker? So it's all absorbing. It's very consuming while you're doing it.
And so just pushing a little bit on that. Let's say you had a bad day at work, and I just need to paint. Are you able to close the door on the conflicts that you had and then just escape into the painting?
Actually, yes. I learned how to turn off on my way home from work a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and then switch gears.
Right.
So usually I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the painting helps.
It does help usually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would.
And it's fun. It's a different part of my identity. I identify more as an artist than as a counselor or as a teacher, which I was for a while. So it's affirming. Right.
Well, I think this type of art, it's really, you're in command, you're responsible, and you're not, some art forms are collaborative, whether filmmaking or something, but like writing and studio painting, you really can just focus on it.
Yes. And actually, I did make a list of reasons I like to do still lifes, and autonomy was number one. I love that I don't even have to rely on a model. I could just set up things. They are mine. They could sit there for days. The most that happens is whatever. Oh, I got COVID, and I set up a still life at my studio in Newman Leather Building. And part of it, there was an apple and something else. And I had a quarantine. And when I came back, the fruit had rotted away. So I got lookalike fruit, but that, so it's all in your own power. Yes.
It's except wonderful. The intervention of COVID.
Yes. Oh, this is another painting style that I go back and forth. Sometimes I'll set up the still life and I'll draw it completely out. And then I'll transfer the drawing to the canvas, and then I'll do an underpainting, and the underpainting you see with the pear and the background still. And then I'll start to, and you do that. Basically, the reason I do it is to set up the whole painting, the values, because if you could get the values correct, then you have the painting pretty much done in a way. Like it'll read as realistic if you get the values correct. So, and then I'll layer the color on top of it. So it'll be more glazing, maybe not necessarily all glazing, but yeah. So I go back and forth between doing more brushy, wet on wet, and then sometimes I'll do a more, this takes days to do. Like the drawing will be one day, and then the next day I'll come in and transfer it and maybe start the value painting, and then I'll let that dry overnight, and then I'll come in the next day and start working on the color. Yeah.
I love the box. I'm into your boxes.
Thank you.
And I love the little arrow. Yeah, perfect.
So I don't know if the audience wants to hear about my painting process, but I went there. So.
No, I should have been asking that. I'm glad you brought it up.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of painters out there. And it's funny. I just went on YouTube to look up trompe l'oeil in the beginning. I could not believe how many instructional videos there are on painting. I mean, YouTube. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, I should have known, but I just really hadn't had time to do it. And I was mainly going on so I could pronounce it correctly.
Oh, okay.
Anyway. So tell us about this piece.
And this piece is one of the last pieces I finished. It's not in the show, but this is kind of mixed because in the water, the way the water is painted, that's just one go, and I like the brushiness of it, and I feel like it reads like water coming through, the colors coming through water and the glass, and then the paper bag is more a multi-day kind of layering on of the color. So this is a mix of the different styles. Yeah. And it's very brushy, so I left it. It's not photorealistic.
Right.
Yeah.
I sort of get that sense when you're cleaning a brush in water and it just, that, let's say a blue paint, it just hits the water and you go, wow, that's really beautiful. So I sort of had a little flash of that when I looked at it. Anyway, cool.
This is a glazed painting that took a number of days. So, and I do a lot of paper bags.
So when you may have explained it, but when you glaze something, what are you doing?
Oh, well, with glazing, it just means that you're letting the paint be translucent. So you put a lot of medium in it, and you're layering it up really slowly over the colors that are already there, and it takes longer. Yeah.
Right, and that's something classical painters would have used.
Definitely, yes.
And like abstract painters would not use that.
I think I don't know. I think there's abstract painters who do all kinds of different techniques.
I guess so, but I just think of that being more like, the thickness of the paint and, texture and so on, more than glazing.
Well, this one I had to finish really quickly because that pumpkin started turning orange really fast. And towards the end, it was completely orange. And so I painted it first, thank God, as part of the painting. So
racing the clock.
Yes.
Cool. And you do such a good paper bag.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, just more of my paper bags.
Right.
Yeah.
And no plastic bags, I see.
No, I don't like plastic bags. So I don't think I think I paint things that I like looking at.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And we may be getting to the end. Oh, wait a second. So we've jumped from paintings in the studio to social life on the streets. So what's going on here?
Oh, well, Bob, when part of being in the show here is being part of the Hoboken arts community and talking about Hoboken. So I also want to say I started coming to Hoboken also going to the figure drawing classes before I even moved to Hoboken. I met the artists of Hoboken through the Liquid Lounge, would have figure drawing once a week, Joe Berzada's place. And so I met a lot of the artists that I still am in contact and see almost daily. So, and through the pandemic, we would, we go to Empire a lot of days and meet up. It's a nice break in the day. And through the pandemic, we would sit out on the steps. And it helped get us through the pandemic. It helped me anyway.
So you're on the steps of Demarest.
Yes.
Looks like you're all waiting for your kids to get out of school. And anyone you want to give a shout out to there? I know there's a lot of people, you may not get them all, but.
Well, this is a larger group than normal. I think it was somebody's birthday. I don't remember who. And I'm not sure who's taking the photo. Maybe John Brancheforte or Anna Lee. And that's John Patterson to the left, who's a great artist who's in a show tonight at the Montclair Museum. Leon Gold, who was on the school board, who's a professor at Columbia. And then we have Claudia, who's a wonderful collage artist and painter. Gail, who's a wonderful artist and gardener. I think that's Cassandra, but it doesn't look, but it's a weird photo of Cassandra's a wonderful person, married to John. Jerry Fallow, the head of arts. And what's her full title?
Ask her to type it in. I think it's Director of Cultural Affairs for the City of Hoboken.
Who makes all of this stuff, a lot of this stuff possible. She's in charge of the art tour, organizing it, and works really hard doing all the music
which is coming up on November
5th and 6th.
Yes.
Bill Hamilton's in the front. I think that's me. There's Sloan, who's a wonderful photographer. Julio, the musician. Lou Carbone, who had a show here.
In sandals.
In sandals in the winter. And then we have Ed Fogarty and Janae. And he's another musician in town.
So Bill Curran is taking us back to the paper bags with his comment. And what is it about the bags that speak to you?
Did you take this
And
photo?
Bill says he took the picture.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone forgives me for putting their photo on this.
What are they going to do?
Project.
Yeah.
Right. It's
They're
too late.
wearing masks, you know. Thank you for taking that picture, Bill.
I think paper bags they're just something that's so common throughout my life, paper bags, and they're just like crumpled paper. They're just something that's a throwaway object, and they're really hard to paint. So I like the challenge of them. So, and I've done them in twisted style or straight up or, all different things.
Good answer. Yeah. Good answer. Yeah. And what's this quirky image about?
This is, I was in a show with little paintings at the about suburbia at the Jersey City Museum years ago, where I had people lying on that was another painting series I did. So I go back and forth painting and then objects, but people were lying on the floor around furniture, and so I became acquainted with the curator at the Jersey City Museum, and she had a show in the park, and so I did a piece where I borrowed a traffic cone and put birdseed on it. And then I put it back and I made it look like it was just part of something that would be normally set up. Like you can't walk over there. But it had birds and squirrels eating off of it. So
they look happy. I like the caution tape too.
I'm not sure exactly what it means, but
right.
Yeah.
Like if you got in the way of the squirrel, the bird, it could be like a Hitchcock film.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so we've covered a lot of territory, and I just want to really thank you for doing the interview.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
And,
thank you.
We look forward to the in-person reception on Sunday from 2 to 5. That's this Sunday. And did you want to give a shout out to anyone?
I just want to thank all of the museum staff here so much, everyone, and Bill Curran for helping me hang all the work, and Bob, Lily, thank you so much. McKevin, Lois, Jerry, thank you for helping promote the show and being such a supportive person in the arts. Rand, who did the video. I know I'm not supposed to name all the names. I'm sorry.
No, you did good. You did good. Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. And also, other art educators that have really inspired me. Amy Weiskopf is a wonderful artist. Dale Zinkowski. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for being part of the artist community in Hoboken. So we're going to close out. Again, the show, we didn't even discuss the title. You can ask Deborah about that on Sunday. Unclassical Contemporary Still Lifes by Deborah Pohl. And 35 really strong paintings. I think you'll enjoy it, seeing them in person. And you really need to check out the light, the color, the brush strokes, and the compositions. So that will happen on Sunday, and we'll see you there. We do want to thank some of our funders. Our upper gallery exhibits are funded by New Jersey Hudson County Cultural and Heritage Affairs, and they get money through the Arts Council, and they help support some of the expenses for the exhibit. And also, when you come on Sunday, if you haven't seen it, we have a strong exhibit downstairs, which is historical, and it's called The Avenue, A History of Washington Street. It will be up until December 23rd, but you'll be forced to see it because you have to walk through it to go to the upper gallery on Sunday. And these names are what we call members of the Shipyard Circle. They help support the museum at a high level, which is very important for us to do all the programming that we do, such as this one and other ones. And the best way to find out more about the museum is to sign up for a digital newsletter, which you can do simply going on hobokenmuseum.org and request it. We do the broadcast every Thursday night called Hoboken Talks, and soon we'll be interviewing Anthony Snyder, and after that it'll be Bill Keller. So we do the Hoboken Artist Talks, and we also do Hoboken Talks. And again, you can go onto YouTube, watch archive shows, and we'd love you to subscribe, make comments, share of others, and the arts and history community needs to grow, and it will grow. And organizations like ours, we feel, are especially important at this time. So do want to thank you all for tuning in. Please spread the word. And we will be ending in a few milliseconds. And I had a good conversation. You enjoyed it?
I did. Thank you.
It did go quick, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Signing off just about now.